Freelance news photographer Mark Siegel makes a living covering crime. He monitors police radios every waking hour.
News, it means bad news, calamity, catastrophes, that's news. It's certainly interesting news.
And as he waits for another victim to be helicoptered to Miami's Jackson Hospital, he knows that TV news sees some people as stories, but not others.
Well, odds are this is a blackmail victim that nobody cares about. This isn't going to be on the news because no one gives a about this guy.
But if you're the right type of victim for TV, middle class or suburban, you'll likely be a lead story.
Police are calling it a robbery rampage at a plantation car dealership.
Just ask Christina Bittner. In December, her husband was murdered and she was wounded in a shooting at a used car dealership. A bloody murder right in the showroom. The TV news crews had a field day.
The finance manager of the auto dealership was killed.
We were victimized by criminals out in the street. And then to be victimized again by the media, it just seemed like they were portraying their story, whatever will sell, whatever will show, to get people's attention. They really didn't care about me, like John, or my kids.
And it's not just Miami, and it's not just local news. Viewers nationwide are complaining that the mayhem seems out of control everywhere, network TV news included. And before anyone can accuse us of being the pot calling the kettle black, this very program now has aired 89 stories since it went on the air last August. 38 of them have been about crime and violence. And counting this one, make that 39.
How many victims I got?
You got 2.
I got a double.
2 weeks ago, I personally did a piece on murder in Washington, D.C. It was graphic, to say the least. And the entire NBC network news division devoting this week to reporting on violence? Joe Ngotti thinks he knows why. He thinks it's the very same reason Miami local news loves to push murder and mayhem.
I think that NBC is probably doing this series because they think it'll sell, because they think it'll be good for the ratings. I hope that's not the case, but I suspect that it probably is. And I think too many journalistic organizations are making decisions today based on whether a subject will sell.
They are foreign tourists, and once they get off the plane, what the hell happens then? What goes wrong? And that's why...
When we came to Miami earlier this month to do this story, we were welcomed at Channel 4 and at Channel 10. At the story meetings there on Wednesday, January 12th, we saw that crime, particularly crime against tourists, was the hot topic.
A visiting Bolivian family could have left South Florida with nothing more than the horrible memories of being attacked. The family of 6 was robbed.
Tourists targeted for crimes, often easy prey, as we know, but crime is a reality for all who call South Florida home. For example,
but what difference does Miami local news make to the rest of us? A lot, because it's probably not much different than your hometown news. Crime and violence are staples of local news nationwide, and some experts say it's leading to an inescapable climate of fear all across the country.
Many people who watch this begin to become fearful of the world, feel that the world is a mean and dangerous place. They don't even want to go outside.
TV news executives love to say that, hey, we're just telling it like it is, that this is a reflection of the violent times we live in. But that's a warped reflection, because they choose to report only certain types of violence. And there's rarely much context. You don't hear very often that the danger of getting killed is often from someone you know, a friend, a family member.
The news feeds into people's sense that they need a gun to protect themselves. Almost all of the violence that is shown is stranger, bad guy, interracial, other violence. And when you look at the homicide statistics, almost half of the homicides occurs among friends and family.
So should there be a violence censor out there, telling TV news directors when enough is enough? To a journalist, that thought is abhorrent. And most people we spoke to for this story said, no way. So what can a concerned viewer do? Demand that your local station present crime and violence news with more context.
There is a great deal of violence in society, and that needs to be reported. The question is, how is it reported, and how selectively it is shown, and how sensationally it might be shown on broadcast news.
But remember, in the long run, the audience has itself to blame for blood and guts TV news. So in the end, most critics and journalists agree. If you do not like what you're seeing, turn it off. Just turn it off. Television news will get the message.
And Tom, you know, even after working in Miami in the 80s, when I was down there about a year ago and turned on the local news, I have to say I was shocked at just how much crime was being covered and at the way it was being hyped and sensationalized, and the whole tone of the newscast. It really has gotten much worse than when I was there about 10 years ago.
I think we've lost proportion in a lot of it. On the other hand, we have to say that there are new patterns of violence that have to be reported because people have to be aware of that. The crime has spilled out of the classic inner city neighborhoods now into the broader community. In Miami, they have the problem of some tourists being stalked. We have drive-by shootings, violence in schools. That has to be reported, but no longer is there any reporting about City Hall, for example, as Fred pointed out. By the way, we're all conflicted by this. Dan Rather was talking tonight about what's going on and his own mind about what needs to be done. At the same time, he'll be the anchor on 48 Hours tonight, which is devoted 1 hour to a serial killer. So, and then we're doing this week about violence.
Right, and I wonder in local news operations how much of this is budget driven, because some of these crime stories are a lot easier and quicker to cover than more issue-oriented investigative pieces, which take a lot of time and manpower. So I don't know, and I worry about the salacious content of daytime talk shows as well. So I don't know.
It's a tough issue, and when people say that we do it only for the ratings, that's not entirely true. But at the same time, we can't go out of business. I mean, that's true for newspapers, magazines, and us.
And let's face it, the ratings have a lot to do with it.
Right, they do. No, that's indisputable.